2020 World Artificial Intelligence Conference in Shanghai, and I'm grateful for the personal invitation by Mr. Li Qiang, Secretary of the Shanghai Municipal Party Committee. I'm honored to be a keynote speaker at this year's event, alongside several great technologists. I've had a different career path than most of the other speakers at this conference. I'm not a technologist, but a student of social science who founded and is the CEO of Blackstone, the largest alternative asset investment firm in the world. I'm also an active philanthropist, having funded transformative projects around the world in areas like education, culture, and the arts. In fact, China is home to one of my most personal philanthropic projects, Schwarzman Scholars, a prestigious graduate fellowship program at Tsinghua University that brings future young leaders from 40 countries to Beijing to learn about China and its growing influence as a global power. I've also been involved in public service, helping my government with international trade discussions, including the Phase 1 trade agreement with China. My introduction to AI came from Jack Ma during a bus ride in Beijing when, as members of the advisory board for the Tsinghua School of Economics and Management, we were on our way to a meeting with a state leader. Jack explained that AI was a revolutionary new technology that was going to transform almost every field of human endeavor. He also mentioned that there were widely divergent views as to whether AI would be a force for good or whether it would be viewed as detrimental, disrupting organizations and people's lives. I was fascinated that the leading entrepreneurs in technology had such conflicting conclusions about AI. So I took it upon myself to meet with many of them to learn what they were thinking and why. As part of this self-education, I had the good fortune of meeting Raphael Rafe, president of MIT, perhaps the best-known scientific university in the world. During my many trips to China, I saw the explosion of innovation and monies from large companies and venture capital going into new AI-based companies and applications. I became convinced that Jack's observations were correct. The world was facing a pivotal challenge to responsibly harness the limitless potential of AI, and I wanted to do something about it. That's why I decided to provide the initial $350 million of funding to MIT to start the Schwarzman College of Computing, which will be dedicated to the interdisciplinary research and advancement of AI, as well as the study of relevant ethical and policy considerations. I've learned that while many countries are working on initiatives to guide the development of AI, no country has successfully established regulatory framework capable of keeping pace with the rapid development of these technologies. Each country is primarily pursuing an independent course in the development of AI without sufficient effort to align their activities with what's happening elsewhere. More worrisome is that there is a growing sense in some areas that AI development is a zero-sum game among nations. Such a posture will slow the most beneficial advances in AI while also introducing substantial barriers to cooperation. To address the situation, we need to establish a global compact for the research, introduction, and deployment of AI. The only way to be prepared for the AI revolution, especially its unintended consequences, is to accelerate global governance and cooperation efforts, as well as the development of international standards and policy guidelines. I would be remiss if I did not recognize the work that many multilateral organizations are already doing on frameworks for international cooperation. But these initiatives need to be prioritized and significantly fast-tracked if they're going to be timely and effective. The recent announcement of the Global Partnership for AI by G7 countries is an encouraging start. But without a truly global compact that encourages global and cross-disciplinary collaboration, there is much for each country to lose and much more in terms of innovation that they will not gain. There are many areas that lend themselves to global cooperation, including healthcare, education, and manufacturing, just to name a few. Areas that impact global stability, such as national security and autonomous weapons, warrant international collaboration and mutual regulation as well. The benefits from cooperation in these areas is enormous. In healthcare, AI has the potential to transform almost every aspect of the ecosystem, from drug discovery and pharmaceutical development to disease detection to care delivery and management. Through international cooperation in this area, countries will finally be able to address historical challenges, such as unnecessary medical error, rapidly increasing healthcare costs, and inequities in access and treatment. But in order to do this, countries will need to work together to link important data sets and agree on data governance, data access, and data security guidelines. The benefits of collaboration in this area will far outweigh the competitive considerations and can lead to better health everywhere and for everyone. Similarly, AI technology has the potential to drive incredible breakthroughs in education, improving processes and outcomes in the classroom and at the system level. Personalized and adaptive learning systems powered by AI can improve educational outcomes for students of all abilities and increase quality of access to education for all people, regardless of ability, geography, or economic status. AI can also provide decision-making and diagnostic tools for a variety of purposes that are relevant around the world. Most important, AI can help countries train and reskill their respective workforces for 21st century jobs, mitigating the predictable workforce dislocation that may be a byproduct of advancements in AI in some industries. Even areas such as manufacturing have massive potential for application in AI. AI-enabled improvements in preventative maintenance of factories and machinery, worker safety, and human productivity will result in more efficient production that's less prone to accident, error, and waste while delivering a higher quality product. AI will even help companies optimize complex global supply chains and predict market changes. With AI, companies will be able to create more agile, reliable, and resilient end-to-end supply chains that are capable of surviving unplanned global disruptions, much like the recent one we experienced as a result of COVID-19. The best practices of every country in each of these areas, as well as others, should be shared for the benefit of all. Innovations will happen around the world, generating new lessons that can help inform responsible AI development and adoption, which in turn will facilitate better international relations and a more peaceful and prosperous world for us all. It is no surprise that governments have not and cannot keep up with the extremely rapid advancements in AI. This is why leading companies, universities, and technologists must work with their government and ultimately other governments to develop standards and regulations for this powerful technology. Similar approaches have been taken in the past with the development of protocols on nuclear and biological weapons, where agreement on global standards have made the world a safer place. The good news is that the foundation for a model of international cooperation is already in place. In recent years, many organizations around the world have issued principles and guidelines for ethical AI development, which serve as a good starting point for global discussion. Although there are still complicated regional and cultural differences in interpretation and relative importance placed on certain issues and ideas for implementation, there does seem to be a global convergence around a few core principles: transparency, fairness, safety, responsibility, and privacy. The first principle, transparency, is about creating AI systems where decisions are easily interpretable and explainable, auditable, and designed and implemented to allow for oversight. AI systems and software cannot simply be a black box. We need to be able to easily understand where, when, and how AI systems are being used. Second, fairness. Technology should not exacerbate inequality or reinforce bias and discrimination, but rather it should promote inclusivity and be designed to benefit as many people as possible. Third, safety and security. AI technology should never cause foreseeable or unintentional harm. It should be designed to be reliable and resistant to being compromised. Fourth, responsibility. If something goes wrong as the result of a decision taken by an AI system, there needs to be clear accountability and, where applicable, mandatory remediation. This goes hand in hand with the idea that researchers and developers need to consider the risk of any AI technology and demonstrate that they have taken concrete actions to reduce them. And lastly, privacy. Because so many AI applications rely on data, there need to be mechanisms for the protection of people's rights, interests, and personal and private information. AI systems need to disclose how personal information is being used, stored, and protected in an easily understandable way. And users should be able to readily revoke the right to use their personal information as well. The earlier these principles can be harmonized and applied via governance structures, the more likely we are to avoid the negative consequences of AI. This is no small feat. It will not be easy, but it is imperative that we move beyond principles to explicit global commitments, agreements, and eventually international laws with consequences for violation. To this end, I've personally broadened my activities beyond MIT, helping to create a new Institute for Ethics in AI at Oxford University, and joining Stanford's Institute for Human-Centered Artificial Intelligence as an advisory board member. I'm also aware of various initiatives by different groups within China to promote AI ethics principles, including the issuance of governance principles by China's New Generation AI Governance Expert Committee, as well as 2 Shanghai AI governance initiatives announced at this conference in 2018 and 2019. Governments worldwide should prioritize engagement in this area. Finally, the large number of younger people participating in the conference online who are building and will inhabit a world in which AI and intense connectivity fundamentally alter life as we know it, I know you must be excited at the endless possibilities that lie ahead, which will enable your lives in unimaginable ways. At the same time, I hope you feel a strong sense of responsibility for safeguarding the future of humanity and its core values. You must fulfill this obligation, even when the pace and potential of technological change pushes you to do differently. History could not be clearer on this topic. Revolutionary technologies, especially dual-use technologies like AI, require the greatest of care, particularly by those who are experts in their development. I urge you to always choose peace and stability, inclusivity and safety, even in the face, especially in the face, of the tremendous new pressures that are inevitable. At this conference in 2018, President Xi issued a congratulatory letter, and Vice Premier Liu He gave an opening speech, both of which expressed China's desire to cooperate with other countries to develop AI and do so with intent of benefiting humanity. This objective has never been more important than it is today. Now is the time for the world's governments to come together to ensure that AI develops as a force for good. Thank you very much. Have a great conference.